am Malati Vasudevan. I am the treasurer for Sri Balaji Temple Trust, which opened earlier this year in March in Frankton. I will sing a short prayer to Lord Ganesha, who gives clear vision and removes all obstacles from your paths. Shakti Sahita Ganapatim Shankaradi Sevitam Virakta Sakala Munivara Sura Raja Vinuta Guru Guham Bhaktani Poshakam Bhavasutam Vinayakam Bhukti Mukti Pradam Bhushitangam Raktapadam Bhujam Bhavayami Bhukti Mukti Pradam Bhushitangam Raktapadam Bhujam Bhavayami Shakti Sahita Ganapatim.
Welcome everyone to the council meeting for Thursday the 10th of December. I just want to note in passing the passing of Jim Holdham, who was a Civic Award recipient of our city, and acknowledged Councillor Gallagher attended his funeral earlier this week. And Jim was, I think, a colourful character known by many of us around the community, and of course was a Civic Award recipient, and I want to thank Martin for attending on our behalf for that. Items as we look at our agenda. Apologies, I've got an apology from Councillor Young, so I will move that. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. It is as is, so I will move that.
Point.
Yes.
I'd like to raise your wish. I'd like to ask that item 10, I'd like to move a motion. Sorry. I'd like to move a motion that item 10, the sale of pensioner housing portfolio, come up the agenda to follow item 5, the council minutes.
Right. Other views, councillors? Anyone not happy with that?
Just, are there any staff that need to be here that aren't here for that?
Don't imagine so. Blair?
No, the staff are on standby.
Okay.
The consulting team will just have to rattle it up a bit quicker, but that's fine, we can do that.
Okay. So I suppose the other thing I just might ask Blair, have people been advised of the time when this item might be on the agenda that might, who are not here, who might want to be here?
They were advised that the meeting started at 1:30. That
Right.
They were advised that it was item 10.
Right.
So I do know that one of the visitors, Andrew Wilson from Accessible Properties, in the audience. I don't think Nick Green is here, so we just need to make sure that he was contacted to be able to attend.
Right.
I understand he was coming to observe as well, so I just need to get onto that now.
Okay, so if
They
anyone...
obviously had no speaking role, but obviously wished to be here to observe. So.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so is anyone... Yes, Deputy Mayor?
Just an alternative point, that there are a number of items, 1 to 9.
Yes.
Item 10 will be, I believe, a significant amount of time to that. And then there is a document that is in the pink pages, and it seemed to me more logical to get through the other council business and then to dedicate a greater piece of time to deal with item 10 and then going on then to the matters in confidential.
But perhaps, Your Worship, since other people have been expressing their viewpoint, I could be allowed to say why I think that. I'm not saying you've shut me off from that,
No.
but I haven't had that opportunity.
No, just trying to deal with practicality. Sorry, I thought it was a practical matter.
That
sorry.
was more of a counter view to something.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that now, but at the time I thought it was adding to the practicalities of it. Sorry, Blair?
I was just going to observe, I don't believe any matter in this was going to be discussed in confidential. The matters in the confidential were the original offer documents,
Yes.
of which some portions the parties have requested to remain confidential, but the substantive item and matters are all in the open report. The confidential report is just to keep some elements of the papers confidential, but I don't believe any conversation needs to occur in confidential.
Right, okay. Councillor McPherson, did you have just a view about why?
Just really briefly, Your Worship, it was particularly because of the high public interest in it, which has led to a number of people in the audience here, and I think it would be reasonable to have the item early so that they have the chance to hear that without having necessarily to stay for the whole meeting.
Yes, true, and buses and things like that. Yes,
Correct.
Councillor Mallett?
I don't want to disagree with Dave, but there will be people who are thinking it's on item 10 on the meeting and who may not turn up till later on. So
Correct.
there's a reason we put agendas out, and I'm not saying that Dave's request is not unreasonable, but there is, you know,
Every
It's been public.
councillor, every council meeting has the right to change the order of the agenda,
Yes, correct.
and that's always been the case, Your Worship.
Correct, yes. Blair, sorry?
Just again, the notification of the tenants didn't specify anywhere apart from 1:30, so if the tenants were going to come along, they were told the meeting commenced at 1:30. We didn't try to specify time beyond that.
Yes, right,
so-
okay. All right, so, look, I sense there might be difference of view. So what we might do is we might just test that as an actual motion, councillor, and then it's
Yeah,
clear.
happy to do that,
And
Your
then
Worship.
we can go back to the whole agenda. So if you're going to move that item 10 then be moved up to, as like a 5A,
Yes, Your Worship.
right? Okay, and is there a seconder for that? Councillor Gallagher seconding that. Right, I'll take speakers on that if you wanted to add something more, Councillor McPherson.
Just really briefly, again, Your Worship, I think all the points that have been raised about we have an order and that should be stuck to, and there's other items beforehand, that is always the case, and for all sorts of reasons, from time to time, we change the order. In this case, the reason that I'm proposing it is simple. There's an audience here to hear it. Let them be first cab off the rank. I think at the very least, when we're talking about tenants and other interested members of the community, they have a slightly higher priority than the fact that we've got an agenda published and it happens to be in this order. That, I don't think, is a very important reason compared with the making it slightly easier for the audience that are here to hear the debate. And I'm just disappointed to think that all sorts of other reasons that are not, don't relate to community interest are being raised as a reason why we should stick to the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers, Councillor Paulside?
Yeah, look, I do have a question, and it's around the potential purchases. And I know that we'll be dealing with them in public excluded, but because there's more to the equation than the tenants, there's the purchases as well. And I don't have a sense of whether they wanted to be here or have something to say in the public part of this process, or whether they wanted to limit that to the public excluded.
They're here now.
No, I can tell you, Councillor Forsyth, that I don't have a note for anyone to speak other than one person in the public forum, and it's neither of the purchasers.
And you're saying that there were
Well,
ones
sorry,
out?
just relying on what Blair said, Margaret.
So, Blair, do you want to
So
add
look, I
anything
mean,
more to that?
as I say, the two executive representatives from the main entities are here to observe. There may well be questions in the course of debate that council may wish to, through the chair, ask them, but they're not part of our formal presentation. And to reiterate, I don't see any element of the discussion, including any questions of them, would be in public excluded.
Okay.
I believe the matters in public excluded pertain to certain things such as banking arrangements with pieces which are contained within their documents, which are not appropriate in the public domain, but everything pertaining to their offer that's of relevance to the debate is in the open papers.
Yes, I mean, this item is a public item, and it's to be dealt with in the public.
Yep.
The matters in public excluded are matters around their financial matters, you know, that are commercially sensitive.
That's correct.
But everything that's needed for councillors is in the public. Right, so anyone else wish to speak on this point? Otherwise we'll vote. No? Okay, so we might, is the board on? Thanks. So we're just voting just to move item 10 to 5A, okay, on the agenda.
That's carried 10 votes for and 2 against.
Right, Jude.
Only just carried, wasn't it, Judy?
Thank you, Kermit.
Right, Jude, perhaps you might have Mary as your voice today. Okay, good. Oh, right. Okay, moving on. All right, councillors. Blair, just in light of that, I do think someone needs to ring Habitat to ensure, because they will have looked at the agenda timeframe. So if you could do that, thank you. And I do acknowledge there is the CE of Accessible Properties is here in the audience.
I thought
Right.
that's the question I asked, whether both parties were here or not.
Yes, that was a question that was asked earlier, and there doesn't appear to be anyone from Habitat, but they're going to ring them. They're coming. They're coming. Okay, so councillors, having moved that item up, I will now move the agenda with that change.
I'm sorry again, Your Worship, another item. I wish to, at some stage, in asking when you would take that, whether now or later, to move that the items in pink, or some of the items in pink, come out of pink and are debated in public. So I'm not sure, and they relate obviously to item 10 potentially. So I'm asking
well,
you
we'd have to deal with that at the time when the item comes up, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to move the agenda with the change. Okay, so item 10 is now 5A, and with that a change, I'll move the agenda. Seconded by Councillor Tooman. All those in favour? Any against? Carried, thank you. Declarations of interest. Can you note I was previously on the Board of Habitat Central North Island, and Councillor Gallagher, you'll be noting a family relationship with the Gallagher.
For what item?
Item 10,
Yes,
Habitat.
I'll note that. Family relationship, no financial.
No, same. Any others? Right, thank you. Public forum. We have one speaker in the public forum, Eddie Molyneux. I hope I've got that correct. Hello, Eddie, how are you? Would you like to come forward? And if you'd, I think they've shown you the microphones, and that's it, perfect. So 3 minutes have been allocated for you to speak, and that does include question time, and a bell rings at 2 minutes.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to bring up about the letter we received from the council regarding the rent rise, and also that when the new people take over, is it correct that it's February the 4th they pay the deposit by?
We haven't made a decision yet on the item, but is that what it says in the report?
There's a deposit of 4 million being paid, and then another 19 million or something a while later.
That's one of the, that's the staff recommendation. Blair, can you just answer the question for Mr Molyneux, please?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. Sorry, I was just...
What date is the first deposit paid?
Within 5 working days of council. So if council approves today, within 5 working days of today. So that would be next week.
I think the question was, is if there is a sale decision made today, what date would the new owner take over that ownership?
7th of March next year.
Well, it has to be 60 days. That's in the 1986 Tenancy Act. I know the council have some adjustments to different various things in that act, but I think that 60 days is set in concrete. How's that going to work? I think that what we should do is forget about raising the rents now and concentrate more on other council matters, things like the Claudelands Event Centre and things like that, where there's a lot of, you're talking millions in losses. And I think that you should forget all about that rent raise. And I can't make any motions, but if I could, I'd say that it would be dropped from the agenda. And also there was, there's other things now that I think we should all get behind. The tenants, we should all get behind the new owners, do everything possible to make it as the transition as smooth as possible, and give them a fair go, and just let them go ahead with it without having to worry about a rent raise from the council. That once that's signed on the 7th of March, that it will probably be negated because the 60 days hasn't been given.
Okay.
So I'd just like you to consider that, councillors, just dropping that rent raise discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you'd just like to wait there, there's a question here from Councillor Mount.
Oh, sorry.
That's right, Eddie. Thank you. Just can you just you may not know this, but just really clearly, what is the act you're talking about that gives us the 60? That's got the 60-day thing in it.
The tenant,
just so our staff can check that out and make sure.
Sure, Tenancy Act 1986.
And Blair's up on his feet.
I can confirm that a decision made today would well and truly meet that 60-day notice. So 60 days notification of rent increase provided. Council advises the tenants within 60 days of 7th of March, and that would be the intention. We would meet the Residential Tenancies Act requirements. So that's approximately 90 days away from now, and we have 60 days to notify the tenants.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I still think it should be dropped. Let the new people start clean and not have to go through this. I mean, surely the council should have done this a long time ago if they were going to raise the rents. It's probably due to incompetence on the pensioner housing staff themselves. So that's all. But I'd like you to consider that you
Thank you for coming along. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. All right, I don't have any other speakers in the public forum, so we'll now move to item 5, which is the council minutes for the 26th of November. It's on page 5. And I will move that those are a true and correct record of that meeting. Is there a seconder, Deputy Mayor? Thank you. Right, any discussion on those? Right, I'll put those to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? Harry, thank you. All right, now we're on to the item 10, that is now item 5A, which is the sale of the pensioner housing. It's on page 179 of the agenda.
Your Worship,
Yes.
this would be the opportunity then for me to move that in relation to the pink, which is tied, if you like, in terms of subject matter to item 10, and my resolution, which I presume is a procedural one, that is that all items in pink relating to accessible properties be brought out of pink and be available for discussion during item 10.
So, Jude, have you got that up? Put up there.
Just a point of clarification there is Councillor McPherson suggesting that the pink pages relating to habitat would remain in pink.
Correct. In other words, the ones that support the staff recommendation come out, which relate to accessible properties. If that's clear, sorry, is that?
Yeah, no, it is clear. Yeah, I just wondered why we were picking on one of the tenderers rather than both.
Well, I'm happy to talk to that. There is a reason for that. Happy to talk to that. Yeah.
I'm just checking, is that I'm just checking, you say that's a procedural motion you're raising, isn't it?
I am assuming so, Your Worship.
I'm just looking then, are you looking at 3.11.1?
No, I'm not looking at the standing orders, Your Worship.
Okay.
I'm looking at the pink pages at the moment.
Yeah.
I understand what you...
I'm just trying to work out what it is, that's all.
I believe...
Because if it's a
yeah.
procedural motion, we don't have...
Well, it would be items 1, 2 and 6 from public excluded attachments, Your Worship, I think might be a better way of putting it technically.
Yeah, is that a procedural motion, Jude, or just a normal motion?
No, I consider that's just a normal motion, Madam Chair, that the meeting would normally consider prior to going into public excluded, but because this item's been dealt with now, it would be appropriate.
A normal motion.
A normal motion.
Your Worship, could I ask that Jude has one of the cough lollies I took to her?
She's had one, yes, she's working on it. Okay. Mary's learning the interpretation of what she's saying so she can step in. So we have a mover and a seconder, and that is it, and it's a normal motion, so there'll be normal debate, but there may be some question.
Sorry, I have a problem with that, Your Worship, because I understood it was a procedural motion.
No, I've just...
If that means that I can't move an amendment or another motion during the debate, then that's a problem.
No, this is a completely separate motion from this incidental issue.
So just so that we're clear, Jude, it's a normal motion, and that does not preclude you from moving motions or amendments subsequent.
Absolutely, that's a separate item.
Right, okay, we're clear.
Thank you.
So there may be a couple of questions, but I might just go to the General Manager first, just to clarify for councillors why, the basis on which it is in public excluded.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we certainly approached both parties and sought to make everything public. That was our intention. There are certain matters in both Habitat and the accessible offer documents, and particularly their banking arrangements and some of their insurance arrangements, what they have requested remain commercially sensitive to them, and they are unfortunately interspersed through the document. So I'm very supportive of Councillor McPherson's desire, but we would have to redact certain pages, and I wouldn't be able to tell you now which of those pages they are without consulting with Andrew Wilson here. So whilst the vast majority of the document would be public, and hence the reason the content is all on open, there are certain pages which I believe we would have to respect their request and redact those.
And do those, I guess just from a point of view of the sections of the Act which enable this council to have public excluded items, you're clear from your perspective that that meets that requirement?
Yes, I am, and I think also that, for example, if we take their banking covenant arrangements, which are commercially sensitive to themselves, we have had our advisors go through those closely. You've got a copy of our advisors' advice on that. Our lawyers will be here today to provide any comment on that. So without disclosing their particular banking arrangements, we have given you the, well, to my advice, staff have given you the assurance around those.
Your Worship, normally when someone moves a resolution, they're entitled to speak first to it. That hasn't happened yet.
No, but I'll be going to debate. What I said to Councillor McPherson was that we'd take some questions first, and I thought it was quite important, in fact very important, that the General Manager just addressed the particular points, that councillors were clear about the basis on which these matters were in public excluded. But certainly when it comes to debate, I will be going to you.
Well, okay, then one of my questions is why has the General Manager or other members of management not followed the procedure that they agreed to on previous occasions when it became clear during discussions about moving items out of public excluded that they were to separate out within the public excluded proposal items that could come out into public without any technical or legal issues, and items that they felt had to remain there. And that was a clear agreement. In fact, I recall the General Manager himself and the CEO talking to that agreement in the recent past. I would be more than happy if it was if there was a statement here, these ones could, these ones can't come out into public. But now, with them all mixed in together, we've got exactly the same problem that I've complained about before and received assurances from senior management would not happen again, so that if I or any other councillor wished to bring things out into public, we could do that without this situation where they're all mixed in, as the General Manager has just told us.
So, Blair, are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, look, I think certainly, councillors, our intent is certainly not to withhold any information publicly, and I think in the spirit of that, our open report covers all matters, and in fact the items that are in the papers and confidential, 95% of them, 99% of them are in the public. It's just that certain pages are interspersed in the documents, and I guess I made a practical decision to just keep those documents in entirety and confidential.
Well, you promised before that that wouldn't happen again, so that we could have a fair debate about bringing something out. You were the person that actually specifically undertook to do that.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. So I think the General Manager was trying to just finish his sentences there. So have you got anything else to add? I thought you were cut off midstream.
Yeah, look, I just really want to say I believe that all the matters of public interest are in public. There is nothing in those documents and confidential that I believe is not contained out in our report. I understand that we're just checking with Accessible now to see whether they can offer any further information, but as I say, certain pages, my understanding was, would have to be redacted to make that public.
So options could be that we simply adjourn for a period of time to enable staff to do that. I think some conversations are going on at the moment. Just as a holding pattern, councillors, is there any other questions on this issue? Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, if I go on page 2 of the pink, that all of that right through to page, including the Constitution through to page 38, and then there's a picture of the Minister. There's certainly up to page 44. Then there's some pictures of the Minister. There's a picture of some houses. What would be commercially sensitive about that?
I think, as I said, the vast majority of the document would not be. There are just certain pages interspersed with the document, which we were advised were commercially sensitive. So,
So if we talk commercial sensitivity, this is a not-for-profit. This is the division of the IHC. It's a not-for-profit. Presumably all their accounts have to be in the public arena as it is. I'm just trying to work out the commercial sensitivity.
I think I've said there are two things that I'm aware of. One is their banking, specific banking covenant arrangements, which are not a matter of public record. And secondly, some of their insurance arrangements. But things such as their financial statements are absolutely a matter of public record.
So, but they're only a small bit of this, so they're not in this pink. So the frustration and the problem, because we are dealing with the potential sale of a public asset to a not-for-profit body.
As I think I've said, councillors, I am very sympathetic to Councillor McPherson's request. We would just need to establish which pages we would need to redact, and then the balance could absolutely be in the public domain. For the purposes of trying to present this report, I put everything into the open report, including the vast majority of attachments. I felt that rather than redact certain pages, just keep the documents in confidential. Now, if that is not the desire, then we can certainly, with the advice of accessible, redact the certain pages and bring the balance into open. But I don't believe that that would change the nature of the information you have in front of you in terms of discussion.
With all due respect, Your Worship, this is we're repeating the same type of discussion we've had on at least two previous occasions in this council, and I would have expected that staff would have done that preparatory redacting prior to coming here, so there was an easy decision to make for councillors one way or the other.
Right, so are there any other questions on this matter? And then we're going to debate the motion. No other questions? Right, Councillor McPherson, I'll go to you first. You're the mover of the motion.
Yeah, the motion, the word accessible is not spelt correctly, but I'm sure it's also accessible. It's accessible.
You're hoping it to become
well, it's accessible that they would get it about $4 million cheaper. That's been assessed. But and it's a capital A there, Jude, I think.
Can I signal an amendment?
Can I finish my speech? I might even like it.
I'm not chairing the meeting, though.
Well, I'm taking this as a motion to deal with this public excluded matter. So we're in debate. So, Councillor McPherson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I think it's very simple. I think Martin has put his finger on the point. This is a matter of public record. It's a public organisation, a non-profit organisation, and the various acts requiring their activities and finances to be made public. I see no good reason why publicly owned property that this council owns on behalf of the community and is being put up for sale, that all matters relating to it cannot be put out in the public. I have backed off from moving the entire pink go out into the public out of respect for the unsuccessful bidders, as it were. I think that staff have put forward a clear recommendation in favour of accessible properties. So I'm saying, okay, let's be reasonable here from anyone's point of view, and let's only put out the material from the preferred tenderer. I don't think it's. I think it is very unreasonable that any matters that have been any information that's been provided to council by accessible properties not to come out into public. These properties were bought with public money over the years since the early 1950s, and I don't think that we have the right morally, even though we may have the right legally, I don't think we have the right morally to keep anything at all hidden from the public about this. Many councillors around here are in favour of the sale, have said that they're happy to stand by their decision. Well, I think part of standing by that decision is to make sure that 100% of the information relating to the proposed purchaser is available for the public. And I think that's a principle that this council should follow as a matter of course, not because someone is saying, one councillor is saying, hang on a minute, it should be in public. It should have been in public to start with. The other point I want to make is I want to ask in a rhetorical sense, what point is there in management making promises to us about procedure that they're not prepared to actually keep? On matters like this, it was clear, I believe, to them, because we've had debates before about, on this subject area, about items being dealt with in public. It was clear to them, if they had thought about it, that there would be interest in having what's in the confidential section now come out into public. And I think they should have prepared them for that. And I'd like to ask the CEO to maybe put the next promise in writing, because the last promises verbally, unfortunately, haven't transpired and has caused us delay now and a lot of toing and froing that could have been avoided if staff of management had kept their word about that particular aspect. But the main point is that the information in here relating to the preferred tenderer is morally owned by the public of Hamilton and should be available 100% to the public of Hamilton. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I just might, before I go to you, I just might check, because I see, Nicholas, you come back into the room after discussions with accessible properties, just in terms of the practicality, should this motion be passed, can you just update us?
Yes, Your Worship. So Accessible have identified those areas that they're happy to see released into the public part of the meeting, and that is the vast majority of the report, with the exception of 3 annexure schedules, E, H and attachment 6, which contain commercially sensitive information.
So what you're saying is that practically to implement this motion, if it is passed, it is straightforward.
I'm sorry, Your Worship, a point of order there. My motion is very clear what it says. It doesn't have annexures B, C and D or whatever they were excluded. It has the whole lot. And I believe if my motion is passed, that the whole lot comes out. That's what it says. If someone wishes to move an amendment to the effect of what you're saying, I totally understand that. But
yes, no, I understand your motion. I'm just trying to get some clarity around so we know what we're doing here. No, thank you. So you had an amendment, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, it's to go further on Councillor McPherson's resolution with an exclusion of that information, DH and attachment 6.
So it was E, Annex E, page 36 to 39, Annex H, page 46 to 62, and attachment 6 was those 3.
So on that basis, I would include that in an amendment. But secondly, I am concerned that we are opening one tenderer in public
yes,
session,
so what's
and we're excluding. So my
yes. So what would your amendment be?
Well, my amendment would be that the habitat pricing also be available for discussion during item 10, and it would have to be excluding any items that that management might consider falls into a proper public excluded privacy situation. I don't think we can treat two in different ways. Right,
so your amendment that is you are trying to formulate now is needs some work on the wording. So,
that's right.
So councillors, at the risk of being so early into this meeting, I am going to say we're going to take a 3-minute break while the conversation out there is completed and the wording in here is sorted. 3 minutes, thanks. Well, that 3 minutes was a little bit longer. Here we go.
Your Worship, could I say at this point that with the approval of the seconder, Councillor Wilson, I've changed the substantive motion itself to cover all the items in pink relating to pensioner housing, which is in accord with one part of Deputy Mayor's amendment, not the other.
Right, so the motion is inclusive of habitat and accessible properties. Right, thank you. And then Councillor Deputy Mayor, is that...
Well, there's no point in having the amendment because Councillor McPherson's resolution accepts that. The only thing I am concerned about is that the potential purchasers, and I don't think we can assume that any particular bidder is successful or not.
Yes, no, I think that's understood. The question was your amendment relates to them all out, yes, but with the exception of pages. So this is correct now?
Well, I'm happy with that.
Right. And who is...
Sorry, I think there's some confusion, Your Worship, with the Deputy Mayor, because his amendment is not the same as mine. With all due respect to him, I don't think he is happy with mine.
No, so you're right.
No.
You've accepted all items.
Yes.
I've accepted that there are some confidential requests from the purchaser, potential, or both of them. I'm sure.
Yeah, so who is the
So I'll
second?
stick with it, but there's no seconder.
No, I'm asking who seconded it. Councillor Forsyth is seconding that? Okay. Right, so everyone is clear now about what the motion is and what the amendment is. And Councillor McPherson, as the leader of the motion, as the mover of the motion, spoken. Now I'm asking, is anyone else wishing to...
Can I just ask a question, just to make it clear? The pages that, in Councillor Chesterman's amendment, the pages to be excluded are those that the potential, that the offerees,
Bidders, tenderers.
the prospective purchasers have asked to remain confidential. Is that?
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
And they're also tested to make sure that that information was not already available in the public.
Yeah.
So, as well.
Okay, yes, Councillor...
Just a question following on from that. Does the amendment, does the amendment, it's a double negative, that amendment means everything else as well comes out, not just the two potential purchasers?
Well, the only thing in the public excluded are the two potential purchasers' applications.
So we don't need to
But
know.
there are other public excluded items, aren't
Yes,
there?
that's right.
Which
yes.
don't come out.
This only relates to...
It just that the amendment doesn't specifically say that. Well, it says relating to pensioner housing sale. I suppose that's
Right,
enough
okay.
Yeah.
for item 10. Yeah, okay.
That's sufficient?
Yes, I understand exactly what the amendment says.
Yes, right. Did you have a question, Councillor Mallett?
Yeah, I do. Given that, it's sort of a legal type question, given that these tenderers have given us some of their private information under the strict condition that not be released. Now, I assume the other stuff is public information, but pages 36, 39, all those sorts of things. The motion means we break a contract, doesn't it? An agreement we have with people.
But what,
Or break the law, or...
I think there's two questions there. Do we break the contract with those purchasers, potential purchasers, and secondly, is it a breach of the law?
Do we have a contract?
We've run a very thorough request for information process, and in the course of that process, we have established exactly what matters remain open, what matters remain confidential. So if we were to go against that undertaking, then we have breached that undertaking that we've made. As to the consequences, I think that's hard to ascertain, but we've received a request which we have acknowledged and honoured here in terms of the papers brought forward. If we were to move away from that, then those parties may have some recourse they wish to take, but I can't tell you that.
Point of order, Your Worship.
Stop. As I understand it, Blair, the parties have consented to release of the information apart from those pages.
That's correct. So the amendment is satisfactory. I think the question...
Point of order, Your Worship.
Yes.
I'm sorry. You can't just dismiss someone, a council, putting up a point of order.
I'm trying to be helpful so that we're all clear, but
well,
what's your point of order, Councillor?
The point of order is that the General Manager has talked about understandings, Councillor Mallett has talked about contracts. I'm asking, where is the documentary evidence of those agreements to keep these certain items confidential?
So, sorry, that's not a point of order. That's just a normal question. So I will come to that question once Councillor Mallett's question's finished. So what?
Thank you. So just to be clear, to follow up on Dave's question, pages 36 to 39, 46 to 62, 119, 137, 170, 175, if those are still retained in private, we would not be breaching the good faith or the promises or whatever, whatever the right word is, the contract or the agreement we have with Habitat. And now this is just a question to Dave. Do you accept that those are items that are confidential, that
Not in the slightest, because there's not a shred of evidence other than the word of the General Manager in the last 5 minutes that those are there. When I actually spoke to the resolution, they were not even available, those pages that were supposedly not to be released. It's all verbal, and it's not part of any, I believe, it's not part of any document I've seen that it's required that certain, in terms of accepting the tent documents, that certain items are not to be released.
No.
I'd like to see that.
So it hasn't. Sorry.
So look, sorry, councillors. The questions here are related to the motion or amendment for clarity. We are actually in the debating process. So have you got any other questions to help you clarify the amendment or the motion?
Okay, just to be clear, Blair, at the start you did, right at the very start of this, you did say there are some documents related, and specifically you said relating to their banking covenants or something like that, that they did ask. So that's not something you've just sprung on us, that you told us at the start of the debate. There are some things, when Dave brought the matter up, you said, no, there are some things that the thing they have asked us to keep confidential. Yes,
and I think if within my report, within the confidential, paragraph 3 explicitly says there were certain
matters.
What page is that? 17 of confidential, where I don't specify what they are, but I just noted that in the course of the REI process, the purchasers did, in correspondence with staff, specifically request that certain things remain confidential. I haven't specified the pages, but they would pertain to the matters such as their banking arrangements, so they were. There was correspondence between staff and the purchasers to establish exactly what we couldn't release into public domain in the course of preparing this report.
Right, so that answers your questions,
Thank you.
Councillor. So we are in debate now, councillors. So Councillor McPherson has already spoken. So I'm asking, are there any other councillors? Councillor Gallagher. And if you could state, please, whether you are supporting the amendment
Well,
or
I
the
just
motion.
had a question.
Oh, sorry, I thought we were moving
clarification.
on. Yep, sure,
Just
go for it.
Page 45 to page 62, the contents of that, if I was a shareholder in a public company, once the AGM happened, that sort of type of material I would have thought I'd have been there if it was, because this is a public body that receives public grants, public funding, or, assistance. So I'm just trying to clarify, speaking very widely, because it's not for me to identify what they are, but I'm a bit curious that these surely would be a statement of record.
So my understanding is, obviously, Accessible Properties is a subsidiary, wholly owned subsidiary of IHC Trust. It's not a public company in the terms of a public company. So Accessible's accounts are privy to IHC. They're not a matter of public record, which is the reason.
Receipt of any public funding and assistance whatsoever, where does that square?
Well, I can't answer that, but I've certainly been advised by the General Manager that those accounts are not a matter of public record. They are a matter, as a subsidiary of IHC, a matter for IHC. IHC's accounts may well be a matter of public record. And I guess those funding bodies which may give grants to that Accessible may wish to see the accounts, as I have disclosed the accounts to you as part of this offer process, but that's not a matter of public record.
So I think, councillors, if I may, it's pretty. I think the motion and amendment pretty much cover the positions that you can take here. You either, they're clear. So it's not a matter of debate about why. It is what it is, and you can choose how you wish to vote. So I'm asking now, no more questions. Anyone wish to speak for or against? And if you could identify if you are for the motion or for the amendment when you start. Councillor Mallett.
I'm for the amendment, and I think it would be dreadful if we start breaching agreements that we have made with people we negotiate with in terms of private information, and therefore I can't support the motion, but I will support the amendment.
Right, any other speakers for or against?
Yes.
No, yes.
I'll also speak in favour of the amendment for the same reasons as Councillor Mallett. A great deal of business is done on the understanding of confidentiality, and there will always be some records that are given in good faith, and I think we would lose a good deal of reputation, if not be at legal risk, if that information that had previously been indicated as given to us in a confidential nature to undertake a review and study was made public.
Okay. Any other speakers before I go to right of reply to Councillor McPherson? No? So I'm to you now, Councillor McPherson, right of reply.
I think it would be dreadful if this council decides to do away with 65 years of public property that's been under its stewardship without 100% of the information supplied by the potential purchasers to be made available to the public. I think it would be absolutely dreadful to do that. I note that even the current government, in relation to the TPPA, eventually released all the documents, not just some of them, including some quite sensitive material, just by way of example. If this pink pages had any personal information relating to any private individuals, I would draw a line and say we shouldn't do that. There is nothing in here relating to private individuals. When Gary talks about private matter here, the IHC and its subsidiaries are not private individuals. That's a totally different legal class here. And I think that this council needs to read some things like the Local Government Act, which gives us the right to decide whether we release information or not. And in this case, it's not only morally right, it's legally our right to do so. Just because someone gives us some information, says, I don't want to release that to the public, does not mean to say there is any legal requirement on us to follow that. Yes, we should consider it, and I would always consider it, and I have considered it, even though some of the information given to us by the General Manager today is very last minute. I have considered that, and I have flicked through those pages, and I cannot see anything relating to the privacy of natural persons, which is one of the clauses in the Act. I see only information relating to the prospective purchasers and second of cab off the rank, their actual proposals and their own organisations. They are public organisations. They are required for their, at least their parent companies are, to provide all material to the public, to lodge them with things like the Charities Commission and so forth, and maybe under the Companies Act as well. But there's nothing in here that's private to any individuals. So please don't confuse that with the issues that are at hand. I would say to you that, as I said at the start, please err on the side of giving full information to the public, not just some of it. I'm aghast every time I sit in this chamber and hear councillors and management defer to members of organisations that are not public organisations and say, please, would you allow some information to be put in the public? Here we are selling 60 years worth of public property accumulated by the community and by the council for a particular purpose, selling them to an outside organisation, and we're deferring to the to staff of that organisation to decide whether we can release some of the documents from the purchases or not. That is wrong as far as I'm concerned. Whether or not you support the sale of public housing, and that's a debate yet to come, I think you should at least say it should be done in a 100% open fashion, not with things redacted as the legal term goes. Those redactions, even from anyone's point of view, some of them are not necessary, but they're all a concoction. I use that word advisedly, a concoction of our management with the management of those organisations. They're nothing that we've had a chance to check or test or discuss beforehand in any sort of detail. I think that it's way over the top what we're being asked to leave behind up here, and I don't support any of it being left behind.
Right, councillors, we're going to the board to vote, and we are voting first of all on the amendment.
The amendment has been carried, 7 votes to 5.
Right, the amendment is now the motion, so we're voting on it as a motion.
You pushed the wrong button, Rob.
No. He doesn't want anything to come out.
Phew.
Maybe had you worried.
The motion has been carried, 9 votes to 3.
Okay, thank you. Right. Now, Blair, this is your report, page 179. So, are there
Sorry,
any...
Chair, I'm ready. I'm happy to move once we've covered questions.
Right, okay, thank you.
Your Worship, could I note that I've already given the Democracy Manager a resolution in relation to this item?
Okay, so that was not advised to me. Councillor McPherson, and Democracy certainly didn't advise me of that.
I'm easy about the order, Your Worship.
Yes, because it's just
particularly
that Councillor Pascoe did signal to me yesterday that he intended to move a motion, so
I'm happy if
It's
mine
normal
can be...
practice.
You might want to consider that and see whether it's taken as an amendment or how you want to handle it.
I don't know what it is, but I guess that we'll be going on.
I have it. I can read it out if you like.
No,
now.
it's all right. I'll get it from there. We'll start with the report. So, Blair, this is your report. If you like to, are there points you wish to address?
Yes, I think I just would like to just briefly summarise the report, Your Worship. So the purpose of the report today is 2 parts. One is to present all the responses and the outcome of the request for expression of interest process for the sale of the Penshire housing portfolio. And the second is to recommend, or staff recommend, the sale of the entire portfolio to Accessible Properties New Zealand Limited, who are a wholly owned subsidiary of HCC New Zealand. The background to this matter is covered in the report in Table 3, and also the report includes the resolution passed by this Council on the 27th of November last year, which commenced the process in terms of the REOI process we have in front of you today. This process presents offers in accordance with that resolution. 5 offers were received through the course of the process. They are outlined in Table 4. They are from Accessible Properties, from Activate Foundation Trust, Habitat for Humanity, Just Pure New Zealand Limited, and NM Despandi. These were evaluated by a project evaluation team through a very thorough process, and 3 offers were excluded from further evaluation. These either been non-conforming or partially conforming, and they are identified in the report. The two parties were then identified for more detailed evaluation, being Habitat for Humanity Central North Island and Accessible Properties New Zealand Limited. Both these parties have submitted comprehensive proposals which meet all the conditions that Council set in terms of its resolutions, and both are offering to purchase the entire housing portfolio. And the report in sections 47 and then further in section 60 summarise and provide information pertaining to both organisations, and an organisation profile is also outlined in Appendix 8 and 9. Both organisations have very skilled and competent boards, and the list of the board members is available in the information which is now just being released in public. The parties obviously submitted both non-financial and financial offers. The financial offers were evaluated through a very thorough process as well. We received initial offers, and after discussion and testing of those initial offers, including with their financial advisors, we requested both parties submit 4 offers in accordance with options A, B, C and D. And they were to either be a combination of an immediate settlement or a deferred settlement, and no rent increase or an 11% increase. And they were categorised as options A, B, C and D. They are outlined in Table 5 of the report, and I can take the questions on those in detail. You will note that Accessible Properties have provided purchase price offers under all 4 scenarios. Habitat for Humanity declined the opportunity to offer a deferred settlement. They were contacted and offered the opportunity to, we asked them whether they did actually intend to place a deferred settlement offer. They declined on the basis that they couldn't make the deferred settlement work in terms of the financial terms that we had outlined. I do note in the report that Habitat, at the very initial stage, did indicate a deferred settlement offer. That deferred settlement offer was outlined as having a minimum of 12 years deferred settlement at no interest, and then upon the end of that, either 12 to 15-year time frame, there would then be a payment arrangement entered into for that monies that may have then taken it beyond there. We deemed that proposal was unacceptable just due to risk and the value associated with that deferred settlement portion. The financial offers in accordance with options A to D were evaluated, and we're very confident that our process and the conversations we had with the parties has achieved the best financial offer in front of you today. That was a very clear part of the process and was very clearly communicated to the purchasers that they needed to make their best offers. Extensive valuation, legal and financial/audit advice was taken as we worked through this process. So in summary, in terms of the offers, we've received two very credible and conforming proposals from both Habitat for Humanity Central North Island and Accessible Properties New Zealand. They are both very close in terms of the service offered, but ultimately the evaluation process has identified a recommended purchaser, and that evaluation is both in terms of non-financial and financial terms being accessible properties. And the rationale for that recommendation is outlined in paragraph 89 of the report. What I would note is that the offers received compare favourably or are either compare in line or favourably to the valuations under each of the scenarios. But what I would note, and the key message here, is that whichever option you look at and whichever way you examine the financial element of this, either in today's dollars, in present value of a future deferred settlement, in future cash flow, or in our debt position at our key 2020 year, which is the key year in terms of our financial strategy, the accessible properties offer is the best in dollar value and provides the best financial opportunity for council at 2020. Now, 2020 is the year in which our debt to revenue ratio passes through, must be below 200%. And so under all scenarios, accessible properties provides the best financial outcome at that particular time frame. In addition to analysis from a financial perspective, the report also contained an independent report by Stimson and Company that would just provide an overview of each of the purchases. That report did not form part of our evaluation process. It was part of an assurance process just to ascertain more information about the two parties. The report also explains very extensive encumbrances that would be placed on the properties to protect council's interests for a minimum of 10 years. And these pertain to the things such as the properties must be used for social housing purposes, that the tenants must be able to remain, etc. So they are to protect the interests and the resolutions that council put in place when they agreed to sell this. I do note that there is an error in paragraph 174 where there seems to be a word overseas somehow has cropped up in paragraph 174. So the word overseas should be struck out. It is confusing and I'm not sure why that happened to end up there. So apologies for that. So in terms of...
What paragraph was that?
174. Just strike out the word overseas. So council needs to, in considering this matter, make two decisions in terms of whether, when they determine whom and in what form they wish to sell the properties. Firstly, whether they wish to implement the deferred 11% rent increase that was deferred from the long-term plan process. And then secondly, whether they wish to sell with a deferred settlement component or not. Sell either all on day one or sell with a 20% payment on day one and the balance on 3 years out deferred settlement.
Point of order, Your Worship. The General Manager has stated there are those options. There are other options available in front of us as well, and my motion addresses one of them. He may be meaning that they are the options that he considers he would support, but there are other options as well, not just what he's talking about.
Yeah, so that's not a point of order, and as I understand it, the General Manager is addressing his report and the staff's recommendation, and you're quite right. I'm sure
He's told us that there are only two options. That's incorrect.
From the staff's report, there is.
I'll clarify.
Right. But I'm sure there are lots of options that councillors have thought of that aren't in the report. So
I'll clarify,
carry on.
Your Worship. There are two options that I see it based on the staff report and recommendation. The report does explain the rationale for these. The 11% rental increase was linked to the long-term plan process, and there were very clear resolutions passed through the long-term plan process pertaining to pertaining to deferring that until today, and deferring the decision on that till the sale process was being considered. And that rent increase is required to meet a cost recovery targets pertaining to housing services. I'd also just note that the deferred settlement option to council would enable council to share in the significant upside value in the properties which comes about from the income-related rent subsidy that the new purchasers could gain from new tenants to the properties post-settlement. And you'll recall that council is unable to get access to those income-related rent subsidies. They would be available to both Habitat and Accessible, provided they applied for new tenants and the new tenants met the requirements in terms of the government department. But that provides a significant rental increase to those purchasers, and the deferred settlement options as presented enables council to gain a share of that increased rental, which then has an increase on the value. I also note in the report that for the deferred settlement, very thorough mortgage security provisions would be put in place. They are comprehensive. Our lawyers and our financial advisors have been thoroughly involved in their preparation. They would encompass a first-ranking security over all properties, so that's the highest-ranking security you can have, and very commercially robust financial covenants pertaining to reporting and or trigger mechanisms in the event of the company's financial performance deteriorating. And those would enable us to call in the mortgage security. I do note that in the report, if council chose to sell to accessible properties but not increase the rent at 11%, Accessible have indicated that they would increase the rent 6%, and they would commence that process after settlement. So following the purchase on the 7th of March, they would commence the process of giving tenants 60 days notice for a 6% rental increase. So that is built into their offers in terms of options A or C. Under either scenario, if council did choose to pass the increase in rental, tenants can apply and may qualify for increased accommodation supplements from the government. And that would reduce the size of the rent increase to tenants. So, Your Worship, just in summary, the report does outline in both Appendix 3 but also in Table 7 the impact against our financial strategy of the offers. And I guess in summary around those offers there, the accessible properties option D, which is recommended, would result in a $23.4 million reduction in debt across the 3-year period, with $2.8 million also being available into the endowment fund. And so the staff recommendation is that a rent increase of 11% is implemented for settlement date, so notice would be required to be given within 60 days of settlement date, and the sale to accessible properties at $23.5 million, including a 80% deferred settlement component, is given. There will be extensive communication with our tenants following today, assuming a decision is reached on a sale, and I do note that the tenants have already received a hand-delivered letter last Friday informing them of today's meeting and the proposal in front of council. So thank you, Worship. That's
okay. Right, thank you. So questions now. I think also, councillors, just Blair, there are some other people here that have assisted in construction of the report.
That's correct.
Can you just identify in case there are questions for them?
So we have with us our solicitor, Peter Duncan, and we also have our valuer beside him, Doug Saunders. So they are both here to provide any expert input.
If there's any questions for them, right, thank you. The councillors, we will have questions first. So I've got Councillor McPherson, Councillor Mallet and Councillor King and Councillor Pascoe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Blair, what would be the impact on council if it were to decide not to sell the properties, the housing portfolio at all today?
So that is outlined in Appendix 3. And I might get Paul Condor to speak to that. There are some charts, and I'll just... So they are it's page 220 of the report, and you're looking at the option E and option F charts, because I do note that if council chose not to sell today, you still have a an outstanding decision around the rent increase. And you'll bear in mind that the long-term plan has budgeted for a rent increase, but that hasn't been put in place. So options E and F outline the impacts. I'll
In
get
the
Paul-
long-term plan, has it budgeted for the sale or not?
No, it has no sale budgeted, but it has the rental increase and the costs associated budgeted. So,
Thank you.
and at present, we haven't applied the rental increase.
Good afternoon, councillors, through you, your worship. The impact of not selling but maintaining the properties and including the 11% proposed rent increase would be that there would be no change from the 10-year plan. If council were to forego the 11% rent increase, then the balancing the books surplus would be reduced by the impact of that 11% over the course of the 10 years, going from $300,000 next year through to about $600,000, which is the cumulative impact of that rent increase over that time. And debt would be $3.8 million.
That wasn't my question, though. That related only to the sale, not to any issue about rent increases or not. It's just the sale or not. Yeah,
So in simple terms, we have not budgeted for the sale in the long-term plan.
thanks. And so next question, what's the current QV valuation of all the properties that are proposed to be sold to accessible properties?
It is disclosed in the report. Just find the reference here. So paragraph 107 through to 111, and the most recent valuation just of last month is $31.4 million.
31 point.
And I would just note, Council, that's what I would refer to as an unencumbered value. So that valuation is the best use of the properties in the open market. So that's valued as market rental properties, not as housing properties with discounted or lower rent than market.
Excuse me, when properties are valued, including the council housing stock, has that not been based on what the current usage and approved usage is? Approved in a RMA sense, I mean, yeah.
So the QV valuation, as I understand it, councillor, is done for rating purposes and is on the basis of best use.
So we would be therefore overvaluing, you're suggesting, the properties. We would have allowed for 60 years for the valuation of the properties to be accepted to be higher than it is in reality. Is that what you're suggesting?
No.
Because they can't be used in an unencumbered sense?
At the moment, there is no encumbrance. The encumbrance is put on at the point of sale.
Okay, so there's no encumbrance, so the valuation is 31.4 million. That was provided in the last month, Blair said, but the actual valuation was taken in July-ish, probably?
Can I be clear? That is a valuation for purposes of rating. We have received a valuation from Telfer Young in terms of the market valuation, which is disclosed in the report in paragraph 102, and I can certainly get Doug Saunders to talk to that. And that figure, I'm just looking for the figure, it's 30, full market value is, sorry, paragraph 111, the full market value as assessed by Telfer Young, Doug Saunders, was 30.085 million. And that is a slightly different valuation to that used for rating purposes. And I can get Doug to talk to that if you wish to have that.
Yeah, so when was that Telfer Young valuation done? In July, at the same time as the QV one? Because while it's issued just now, it was actually done several months ago, wasn't it?
The Doug Saunders valuation was completed within the last month. Yep. The quotable value, so Doug Saunders valuation is dated 30th of October.
Yep.
Quotable value was 1st of September.
Okay, and there is a current market movement in the Hamilton area announced by, I think, QV recently of 18% per annum, or give or take a few percentage points, decimal points. Is that correct? A movement upwards.
Not to my knowledge, 18% in 1 year, no.
Okay, well, I'll provide you with that information afterwards, because that would appear to be germane between the 1st of September. Sorry, was the 1st of September, Blair, or was it?
Yes.
Yeah, 1st of September valuation of 31.4 million by QV, and March next year there would be, if my figure of 18% is correct, and I'm happy to stand by that, it would be a 9% approximate movement could be expected given the current rate of change.
Look, I can't comment specifically, but there obviously the market is moving. But I think the key here is that
it's moving upwards too, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think yes, it is. But our report took closer guidance from the work of Telfer Young because that was very specific to the properties. It was based on very specific cash flows, situational circumstances of the properties, and also you'll note from the valuation report undertook different scenarios based on the restrictions placed upon the properties, either by way of a current rental arrangements and increased rental arrangements with 11%, and then various scenarios factoring in if the new purchasers were able to get access to the income-related rent subsidies, what that may do to their cash flow. So there are different valuations that
so it's a new rationale, is it, when the tenant of a property can access cash from an outside source, the property value goes down. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I'm suggesting
it goes up.
I'm suggesting that the purchasers can access monies from the government in the way of income-related rent subsidies for new tenants, which council cannot, and that affects the valuation of the property.
Upwards or downwards? I'm trying
upwards.
to get it upwards.
So
it could be actually worth more.
No, to be clear, the value to council, if we were to operate them consistently as they are now, to find that figure.
30.085 or 31.
No, because that figure is if we were to use them on the open market and rent them on the open market at market rentals. Quite different to how we operate them at the present time, which is on the rent them to pensioners at a pensioner rental, which is quite different to the open market rental for those properties.
So when we discussed this first a bit over a year ago, or not first, but one of the other times, there was a figure given to us of approximately $26 million as the valuation. It's moved, let's say that was sort of an internal figure, and it's moved at least to the Telfer Young 4 million plus upwards from that time in the year or so. So we could expect at least a 7-figure movement upwards further between now and March. Would that be a reasonable sort of, I'm not trying to put exact figures, just a reasonable sort of ballpark way of looking at it?
So the $26 million figure was the 2012 rating valuation, and that's disclosed in the report in paragraph 108.
So the 2015 rating valuation is 5 million higher.
That's correct.
So that's about a 18 or 19% movement.
Correct, and that's for best and highest use in the market, based on rating purposes, not a valuation pertaining to used as pensioner housing with the appropriate rental.
But the percentage movement might apply. Let's say your movement, your use as pensioner housing, the valuation was lower. The percentage movement is still upwards by about that same percentage. If I'm looking at the Telfer Young figures.
Does the valuer need to answer these questions, because we've got the expert in the room here? I mean, he's the one that knows about valuation.
Sorry, Your Worship, I only have staff in front of me here,
so
that's why I'm asking.
Yes, I accept that, Councillor McPherson, but I'm really directing this to the General Manager. As we said when we started this, the value is here.
Well, I'm trying to establish not exact figures, but types of movements, and I'm more than happy to accept that the valuation is 30.085 million, provided by Mr Saunders from Telfer Young, whom I've spoken to before, and I would totally accept his word. No, but I'm trying to establish what sort of movements are happening in the market, whichever market you're looking at.
And he's the expert in that. He would know more than the staff would. So, Doug, you're listening to all of this. I think the questions are clear. Do you need to just assist here? Because there are a variety of valuations in this report, and some clarity around the differences might be helpful, I think.
Yep, certainly. The market's a varied thing, and you'll get different sectors of the market will move in different directions at different times. Obviously, at the moment, there's a buoyancy about the market. It's carrying just about all property sectors up, but some debate at the moment, comment on if we just talk general terms about the Auckland market coming off the boil. And one of the easiest ways to understand whether a market's going up or down is when the next bit of news you hear about the property market isn't as good as you thought it was. You're probably tending to cut at the top, and if you're at the bottom of the cycle, the next bit of news you hear is actually better than what you're anticipating. That's perhaps the thing. So I think at the moment, certainly the Auckland market, housing market, looks like it's cusped a bit. The Hamilton market, I think, is still pretty strong, so I don't think we've reached that peak yet, so that would be likely to travel into next year. Although I think what generally does happen in the market is it doesn't actually gradually rise steadily. It goes along and it lifts in a section, and I think a good example of that, digressing slightly, is recent auction this morning. Harcourts of several commercial properties have all seen yields around 6%. Now, we would have seen those at 7% a couple of months ago, based on the evidence then. So we've had, through a defined market activity, a lift in the market. So that will set the basis now for the next part of the market activity. So going back to your question, yes, we've had probably that 18% increase was referring to general residential property. This is a different market to that in terms of rental investment property. It has also had significant increase. But it's
What's
more,
the percentage movement, Doug?
I
roughly?
couldn't give you that specifically. It's more generated by your cash flow that's generated, and we had an increase in market rental rates at the early part of this year, and we had a slight lowering in yields. Those two factors combined give you that lift, and I haven't got an actual average that I can give you that is consistent, but yes, it has risen. I would think it'll be reasonably level for the next little while. You know, you have this lift and then it sits for a while until demand outstrips supply and you get another lift. But I think we're at that point at the moment.
Can I just clarify, Doug, you're talking about the normal rental market as opposed to the social housing
Yes,
market,
this is
are you?
quite a different parcel that we've considered with its constraints, both in terms of the encumbrances placed on it, but also just the social housing rental levels are at quite considerably lower level than the general marketplace.
But you took them into account when you had made the 30.085 million assessment.
So the 30.8 is comparable with the quotable value recent rating valuation, where we're both treated as unencumbered, able to be leased in the open market to everyone. So that's about the only comparability you've got between those two figures, that they sort of fall on the same level on that basis. When you place into the properties the cash flow you'll get on the basis of the restricted income through social housing, the values come down, and that's where the changes are.
If there were an 11% rate increase, no, it's rental, sorry, increase.
It has a marked effect on the properties, and you can see that through the valuation.
Yeah.
So just please clarify for councillors, because we're talking a lot about valuations, just clarify your valuation in respect of what you've just been talking about, the encumbrances in terms of the social housing market. Where is that in the report? Just so that we're clear here, because there's lots of numbers being bandied around.
Yes, there are. So our approach to it was to look at each of the individual properties, and that enabled us to consider each relative to the location and the quality of the accommodation, things like that, and treat them that way. So that gave us a total value, adding up the sum of that. We then set it on the basis that you would sell it to one person on one day. There's a form of discounting that will take effect, and you'll see we've shown that in the valuation, in the form of selling costs, legal costs, holding cost, and a profit and risk for actually on selling them. So that's how we've arrived at it.
What page are you looking of your report,
Yep.
is it?
The report to councillors.
Attachment 4?
Pages 14 through.
They are quite detailed spreadsheets, Your Worship.
So I think, Chair, I think
I just wait.
2, 3.
So can you please point to us where you're talking about the valuation of them as they are, social housing? What page are we looking on?
So Doug's referring to spreadsheets on pages 234 to 242.
Sorry.
Right.
Oh, I got it, yeah.
Right.
Yep. So that just sets out the individual values. Each individual property considers, well, the point of showing that is that each one considers the cash flow that could be obtained from it. That cash flow stems from an existing rental. The council hasn't increased at this stage, or the 11% increase in the rental. It then allows, through its modelling, for an annual 2% increase in rents, so that cash flow will grow just naturally through those. It also factors in the IRS, the income-related subsidy. So I was able to build in the steps in rental that will be attributable to the parties when they're buying the property, and also to what council get. So those cash flows are then brought back to a current value through a discount rate, and technical, which is derived from our sales of similar assets.
Right.
Which is what?
Which is
Which
where?
is what?
Yes.
Sorry, which?
What number is that?
Okay. Is there a summary table that the council can refer to?
Is this the one on page 249 in the electronic version? Because I can't see anything approaching a table in 234.
So the summary table, there's a summary table on page 193, which provides the valuation ranges pertaining to each of the offers.
Yeah, 1.2. Sorry.
And it's
What?
Just in your report, Doug, is it on our page 243?
243.
243, councillor Zhao, is the valuer's summary. Perhaps if you just walk us through that.
Yes.
On page 243, your table 6.1.
Okay, so on the basis of the existing rental remaining, so there's no 11% increase implemented by council, and from that point on, there was just a standard 2% increase per annum. My assessed value was 15.5 million. So that's council's current position if they weren't to do anything from that point.
Great.
On the basis that they implemented the 11% increase, that value is 18.3 million. So again, sorry, 18.0545.
Thank you.
Okay, so they've included. If I talk to my figures, so once we implemented the 11% increase, on the basis that was put in, then there became a couple of options that under the encumbrances, it finishes after 10 years and the rental values could go to market, or, as will most likely happen just through the nature of the properties and the type that they are, it'll remain as a social housing situation, whereby the rents will follow that lower tier.
Mm-hmm.
So I provided two options there and relating to that, and this is where you get a range of value of between 18 and 22.7 million on the basis of either continuing with having an 11% increase but continuing with social housing at the lower end of that range, having the 11% increase but after 10 years being able to go to market is at the higher end of the range. So,
And I think just to add to that, of course, where there's a deferred settlement, council was able to ascertain an element of that uplift in cash flow through the 3-year period, and that's also captured in this valuation.
one thing that came out after having done the valuations, we were then asked to evaluate the tenders, so it was following our assessments. It was quite clear that both the tenders, the certainty of cash flow was quite important to them. Initially, the tenders were lower when there was no 11% increase in there. With the 11% being in place, they lifted quite considerably. And then again, on the basis of the deferred settlement from one of the tenders, that allows certain cash flows to have taken place and give them certainty of income, so they're prepared to pay more because of the certainty around getting those cash flows. If you're asking them to pay without that certainty, that's why the figure's lower as a one-off price up front. So hence you get that range of value.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPherson?
Yeah, so I've got one other area of questions to the General Manager. How much has been paid by tenants into this portfolio since council first owned houses in the 1950s, approximately? This is a question that was raised before. It's not a trick question. We asked staff to come back with those figures on a previous occasion.
Certainly, I'm not aware of that. Sorry, I'm not aware of that question before. So you're asking what is the rental income that we've received?
Yes, ballpark.
I don't have that figure. I'm sorry. I'd have to.
So you wouldn't know if my surmised calculation at the time between $50 and $60 million was correct.
Look, I'd have to go and calculate that, but I would also note that against any rental income, there'd also be comparable expenses. As you would recall, Council, we've operated this activity certainly for some time as a cost recoverable, 100% cost recoverable activity. So rental income was set to recover costs.
And we did ask for the figures, all the figures on both sides of the ledger, did we not, back when it first was debated?
I don't recall a question such as that now.
Seems to be some things forgotten.
Okay.
I haven't finished
Yes,
yet.
sorry,
I'm
yep.
just commenting there seems to be some
Yep.
things forgotten
Question.
by management between meetings.
Question.
But what has been the government, central government input into this area since the start? And those surely are figures that are available
you referring to
There's
money?
been several different pots that councils could apply to, some of which we did apply to.
So we certainly have an outstanding loan to Housing New Zealand, which is disclosed in the report. The value of that loan is $480,000, and it would be our proposal that would be repaid immediately upon the settlement.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking how much the quantum of that we've received from the government. I mean, I don't see what the point, Your Worship, of answering these questions
How much
are.
money has the government given us, either grant or loan, since we've owned these properties?
I don't have that figure on me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Waste of time.
Councillor Mallett, I've got you next.
Thank you. And this is to Blair. Thanks, Doug. You talked about the rental assistance or the subsidies that could be applicable to people who, if they're not owned by us. Is that correct?
So the government has made it very clear that only those entities who are accredited under the new scheme can apply for rental, top-up or subsidy under the income-related rent subsidy scheme, and councils are specifically excluded from that scheme. Okay. So assuming the new social housing tenants meet the criteria, and they have to be new tenants, not existing tenants, then the purchaser, who provided they're accredited, can apply and receive a market-related rent. And so whatever the tenant is paying, that amount, the purchaser or the owner would receive a further amount from the government to bring that rental up to market-related rent. So it's quite a significant advantage to those parties over a council.
So in terms of cash flow for the purchaser, that brings new money into the equation that could not be. So in terms of valuing the thing, it's more valuable owned by someone else, simply for that one reason alone. There's probably other reasons, but for that particular reason, it's more valuable to be owned by someone else, and us having that cash will get, yeah.
So certainly they can over time, I have to mention it is over time, as the existing tenants change and new tenants are assessed and placed in the properties, and some of those tenants may qualify. Over time, the rental income that they receive, including the income-related rent subsidies, would be higher than council can receive.
If council own it over time, none of that can happen.
We certainly can't access that income-related rent subsidy. Now, the deferred settlement...
Any of it or some of it?
We can't access any income-related rent subsidy. Councils are specifically excluded. Council can obviously put up the rent, but the only avenue available to tenants to mitigate that is an accommodation supplement, and that's not the income-related rent subsidy scheme. It's quite a different scheme. And so the deferred settlement option, or available to council here, enables council to gain a higher price and, I guess, share some of that revenue upside in terms of a sale price offer. That's what we're seeing. So
the new purchaser would be able to pay us more, and because these guys, I think, are sort of non-profits, most of that would go back into maintenance and wraparound services, etc. So this is new money, not just rental money, but money that can be spent in some of these other services, which these Habitat for Humanity and Accessible was part of the criteria for there to be.
It's a significant advantage to the third sector, to those that are accredited. And I guess that was, if we go back to the housing options paper that council considered last year, one of the reasons council decided to sell the properties to social housing providers, particularly those who were accredited, was that exact reason, that they get access to money that council can't, and by definition that money would then be available to provide a better service over time, including better properties.
And there's no difference between Habitat and Accessible's ability to receive that, or
that's correct. They're both accredited.
Both are qualified.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, we're going to take a break for afternoon tea now, and we'll come back at 20 past.